If you've started practicing Build a Sentence on the TOEFL, you probably know some basic patterns, like putting the subject before the verb in statements, or starting a question with a helper verb. Those patterns are a great foundation. But what do you do when a question is more complex than the basics cover? In this video, I'll show you how to read the clues that every question gives you, so you can adapt your approach and handle anything this task throws at you, even on the hardest versions. First, a quick overview of the task if you're unfamiliar with it. In Build a Sentence, you'll see a short conversation between two people. The first person's sentence is already complete, but the second person's response has blanks. Your job is to drag words from a word bank into the correct order to build that response. You'll see 10 of these on test day, and the scoring is all or none. You have to place every word in the right place to get a point. That aspect can make this type of question tricky, but the important thing to know is that each question gives you useful information, and learning to spot that information is what this video is all about. Now, learning common patterns, like subject-verb-object order or how to form a question, is absolutely worth doing. Those patterns will help you with the more straightforward questions. But as you move into harder questions, you'll find that a single pattern doesn't always tell you everything you need to know. That's where reading the clues comes in. Instead of trying to force one approach, look at what the question gives you: the punctuation, the types of words in the answer choices, even whether subjects and verbs match up, and let those clues guide your next move. Here are a few clue types to start looking for. First, punctuation. A period at the end means you're building a statement. A question mark means you're building a question, and that changes the word order. Second, helper verbs. If you see a word like has, does, or will in the answer choices, it's most likely a helper verb that's going to come before a main verb, and when you're building a question, it's likely the very first word in the sentence. Third, agreement. If one potential subject is singular and one is plural, each one can only pair with certain verbs. Noticing that eliminates impossible combinations. Fourth, boundary words. Words like that, where, who, or when in the answer choices often mean that you should think of the sentence as being two separate parts, a main idea and a secondary idea. So, when you spot one of those words, you know you'll need to build each part carefully. Let's see how this looks in practice. I'm going to walk through 3 examples in this video, and each one will use a different clue as the starting point. Also, please note that though Magoosh TOEFL uses official questions from ETS in our study plans, these upcoming questions are instead expert-crafted ones. Here's the first question. One person says, "I need a good book to read this weekend." And you need to build the response using the words at the bottom. Go ahead and pause the video to give it a try. And hint, there's a question mark at the end. Welcome back. Let's walk through it. The first clue is the punctuation. There's a question mark, so we're building a question. Now let's look more closely at the answer choices. We have has. That's a helper verb, and in a question, it's likely the first word. We also have 3 noun phrases: your brother, the one, and him. At first glance, either your brother or the one could be the subject. But notice him. That's an object pronoun, and it refers to the same person as your brother. So those two go together. That means the one must be something different, and given the context about needing a book, the one is the book. Now we have our structure. Has starts the question, your brother is the subject, and finished is the main verb. That gives us, has your brother finished? Then we attach the object, the one, and wrap up with the extra detail. I lent him. Our complete sentence, has your brother finished the one I lent him? The question mark, the helper verb, and even the pronoun him all pointed us in the right direction. Now let's look at a question where a different kind of clue takes the lead. This time the first person asks, "How is the vegetable garden doing this year?" Pause the video and see what you can figure out on your own. And notice that the response already has one word filled in for you: grows. Welcome back. So, where do we start? The period tells us it's a statement, but beyond that, punctuation alone doesn't help us much. Here's where a different clue takes over: agreement. Look at the two verbs, grows, which is already placed, and are, which is in the answer choices. Grows is singular. It needs a singular subject. Are is plural. It needs a plural subject. Now look at the possible subjects. The tomatoes is plural and neighbor is singular. That tells us neighbor must go with grows, and the tomatoes must go with are. We haven't thought about meaning yet, and we've already figured out which nouns pair with which verbs. From there, we can build the sentence. The tomatoes that my neighbor grows are delicious. Lastly, notice the word that. In this case, it starts a describing clause that sits between the tomatoes and its verb are. That's another kind of pattern worth watching for. Now let's try one more. And this time, it's the hardest type that this question can throw at you. Pause the video to try it on your own first, and see if you can pick out a key clue among the answer choices. Welcome back. Let's start with the clues. The period tells us it's a statement, but the bigger clue is the word that in the answer choices. That's a boundary word, and it tells us this sentence has two parts: a main idea and a second idea that likely provides some kind of description. Let's focus on the main idea first. We have the advice. That's the only noun phrase among the answer choices, so it must be the subject. Our subject now needs a verb, and our choices are came or seemed, but notice how my father is at the end of the sentence. Given the context, it's most likely that the advice came from my father, and that's exactly the main idea of this sentence. The advice came from my father. We now have all those blanks in the middle, and this is where that comes into play. The word that comes right after the noun it describes, the advice. So, what kind of advice was it? The kind that seemed most helpful. Whenever you spot a boundary word like that in the answer choices, try to identify the main idea first, then figure out where the description fits in. That two-part thinking is the key to handling these more complex questions. So, what's the takeaway? Patterns give you a strong foundation. They'll help you with the more straightforward questions. But as the questions get more complex, the real skill is reading the clues. Punctuation tells you the sentence type. A helper verb not only helps the main verb, but it also helps you to narrow down your placement decisions. Similarly, subject-verb agreement narrows down your options before you even think about meaning. Lastly, boundary words should encourage you to consider how the sentence might be split into two different parts. Every question gives you something to work with. You just have to know what to look for. If you'd like to go deeper on each of these strategies, our Build a Sentence lessons in Magoosh TOEFL cover everything in detail, from working through basic sentences up to building complex two-part sentences. For more practice with Build a Sentence questions, check out Magoosh TOEFL. We offer 10 full-length practice tests directly from ETS, the makers of the exam, and we have more than 200 Build a Sentence questions for you to practice with. Plus, for the other tasks on the writing section, we offer instant and unlimited feedback on all your writing responses. The link is in the description below. Thanks for watching, and happy studying.